Everyone knows the Ficus Benjamina is the drama queen of the plant world. Usually just moving it across the room causes leaves to drop. So moving it entirely out of soil into semi-hydro seems like a recipe for disaster. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how I moved this Ficus Benjamina from soil into Leca, how I handled the sensitive roots, and more importantly, an update months later where I show you how it settled in with absolutely minimal leaf drop and incredible new growth. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do to transition my Ficus Benjamina variegated from soil to living in Leca is to take the plant out of the soil. Now, this is always a very interesting exercise, depending on how your plant has grown, depending on how dry your media is, but this one clearly is not as problematic as I thought it would be. That was very easy to take out of there. And this is what I have. And you can see that plant is, yeah, that looks really decent. It's fairly easy to take that off. I think just giving it a shake takes off quite a fair bit of that soil. See? That smells really, really good. That's what I've got so far. So in order for me to continue, I'm going to take this outside and I'm going to rinse it, and we will be right back and you'll see what that root system looks like. Well, I am back from outside and this is the root system of my plant. I'm really, really happy with how that washing off has gone. You can see, however, that I do have a few like little bits and pieces of organic matter there. And look, you're trying to get as most of it off as you can. It is not a deal breaker if you've got a few bits of bark here or there. What's really important though is getting rid of some of these roots. So you can see some of these really much smaller roots, secondary, tertiary roots that are coming off of the main primary roots, the big ones over there. They're looking a bit, they're a bit scraggly, they're a bit brown. And these are the roots that we expect when this plant is transitioning. These are actually going to die off. So when I am doing my transitions like this, I really and you can see how easily they pull off. I pull them off. And like I said, that's really just to make sure that I'm not getting too much dead organic matter in my growing setup. So it's, you can use a sterilized scissors if you want, but, even just pulling it off like this with my hands seems to work well for a small plant like this, whose roots are not so tough, as it were. So I'm just removing, see, that is what I've got off. So just things that look like they're bunched up all together, just getting rid of that really. And that is what I get left with. I'm happy with that. So for my Ficus Benjamina, and see, those are the leaves looking so beautiful and clean, and there's a fair number of leaves on here. Ficus Benjamina is one of those that drops leaves very, very easily. So it's going to be interesting to see what my plant is going to look like moving forward. So yeah, all right, on to the next stage. This plant is going to go through the long method, and I like to use the long method for plants like this where, the leaves are a little bit delicate and things would go a little bit pear-shaped if that plant wasn't supported with nutrition from day one and a lot of hydration. So for this one, I am certainly using the long method, and I've got my jug that I got from IKEA. And if you're interested in finding out what this jug is and where you can get it, there's a link in the description. It is simply IKEA. I love it because it's got that brownish hue to it, so there's not too much light that enters, so it protects that nutrient solution. But before we do that, I've seen something on here that I think is really important for me to mention. So when you look at my plant here, there's some little, like that. That's really at the base, and that's going to be pretty much sitting in my nutrient solution. I don't want that. So these are really scraggly. They're not really bringing much to the table. So I just pull those off, and so that allows me to have a clean base when I get my plant in my solution. So again, you know, sterilized scissors here would be a way to go. There you go. Actually, maybe even this little one over here. So I've gotten rid of some of those. So this is a plant that you could actually separate and get many plants, but I'm just going to keep it like this because I love the bushiness of it. Yeah, so now that we got that out of the way, I get my plant in there. So the important thing is I'm not going to fill this all the way to the top. I just want to make sure that those roots are submerged. Just give it a bit more. So my roots are submerged at this point. Now I am pouring into this my Clonix Clone solution and my root zone, which mixed together what I like to call my special sauce. And this is what's going to support the plant with nutrients, but also going to encourage root development. So there are two things that we are expecting to happen here. We're expecting that the roots that are not as robust, what some people like to call the soil roots, they're probably going to die. But we're also expecting that the ones that are a bit more robust and do transition will then be able to live in that hydro or water environment. But we're also expecting new roots. And some of these new roots might come directly from the stem, the plant itself, or they might come from the roots that are already there. So you start to get little new secondary roots of the roots that are already there. So normally when I'm doing the long method, I would put an air stone here. And what the air stone does is it allows fresh oxygen to go through that nutrient solution and really just jumpstart the root healing and the root development. But because I have so many projects going on at the moment that require the use of my air stone, I don't have an air stone available. So what I will be doing for this particular plant is changing this nutrient solution every week. I will make sure I dump this out, put fresh nutrient solution, which is easy enough to do because this is a relatively small plant. And then when those roots are ready to go into Leca, I'll see you then. It's been 48 days since I put my Ficus Benjamina in to do the long method in preparation for it going into Leca. And I must say things are looking very, very good. If you take a look at that plant there, it looks amazing. There's been almost no leaf loss, or at least not any that I can see. And the fact that the leaves are looking so great makes me think that the roots are just as happy. So let's take a look and see what's happening there. So look at that gorgeousness. Those roots are looking just absolutely delicious. They look really, really good. There's lots of root growth that has happened. You can even see that there's some primordial root formation coming on. There's some primordial stuff going on there and it looks really, really good. You can see the new roots there and some of the old ones, as I touch that, they slough off. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this plant outside and I will give these roots a wash just to make sure that if there are any dead or dying roots that are still on here, those come off before I put my plant in Leca. This is a really important step. Using the hose, I just wash off as many of those dead and dying roots as I can. And as you can see, there's still a little bit more that flakes off, and that's okay. That is absolutely okay. Look at what happens when I do that. So this is the plant that we are working with, and that is what my roots now look like. The next step in this process is literally to pot my plant up in Leca, and I'm going to pot this up in a 14 centimeter nursery pot, and I'm going to use the submerged method. This is the little pot that I'm going to use as my net pot that will fit very, very nicely, and I've got a lovely pot here that I'm going to use as my cache pot. I've got some Leca that I prepared earlier. I washed it and it's been soaking. Now, if only I can find it. That is some Leca that I prepared earlier. And what we're going to do is fill up this pot a third of the way. So a third of the way up. So about that much. And I only say a third as a rough guide, just to sort of help you figure out exactly where your plant is going to be, because we don't want the roots to be right at the bottom, but then we want the plant to be well supported inside the pot. So actually, I think I have found a sweet spot for my plant right here that will work really well. Okay, so I try and spread out the roots as much as I can. So I'm not just putting them in a heap and then I just put more Leca in. There we go. And the next stage is I just give my pot a little squeeze. And in doing that, you find that you've got a bit more space, redistributes the Leca, and you might even have space to put more. So I'm really happy with how that looks and the position of those roots. You can see that my roots start over there, which is exactly about a third where we put that. And that is what we want. So the next stage of this process is I'm going to get my cash pot and I will put my nutrient solution in here. Now, if you've got a self-watering planter, that works really, really well because you can actually see where the water level is. Now, I'm just going to sort of guesstimate because I sort of have been doing this for a bit of a while. So I've got a rough idea how much to put. And I'll show you a little trick in a second. So I've put my pot in and I've got my nutrient solution in there. When I pick it up, you can see that the level looks like it was wet around there. So you can sort of use that as a guide, and I can actually even put a little bit more. And this that I'm putting is not water. This is my Clonix clone solution. It's a rooting solution. It's the exact solution that the plant was soaking in as I was doing the long method. So I'm keeping it in this solution for probably the next couple of weeks, 3 weeks, and so on. I just want those roots to get used to being in that environment with a solution that it's had before and continue making those new roots. And once I see that the plant is starting to get new roots, new leaves forming, not roots, and I will start to see root action going on here. So those roots are going to start growing into the bottom. And at that point, I'm quite happy to switch over from my rooting solution into my long-term foliar solution, which in my case happens to be foliage focus, but it can be anything that you have available at your disposal, which is a hydroponic nutrient. So there we have it. I'm going to put this back in its bright warm spot and we'll see you again when we're ready to switch from Clonix clone solution to foliage focus. Here we are, exactly 77 days since the transfer from the nutrient solution to Leca. And the verdict? As you can see, the canopy is full. There was minimal leaf loss during this entire transition period, which for a Ficus Benjamina is like winning the lottery. But the real magic happened below the surface. Look at this root system. These aren't just surviving roots. These are new, aggressive, healthy roots. They have fully latched onto the Leca clay balls and are drinking up that nutrient solution. This proves that with the right cleaning and a consistent moisture, this drama queen actually does love semi-hydro. If you want to try this with your own ficus and want a place to share your progress photos or ask for help if things go wrong, come and join my free semi-hydro Facebook group, Semi-Hydroponics with the Leca Queen. The community there is just incredible. And for a deeper dive into growing healthy indoor plants, generally, you can grab a copy of my book, Plant Parenting for Busy People, linked below. If you enjoyed this experiment, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. Now, in this video, I showed you the practical steps for the ficus, and I used a very specific nutrient and soaking approach to get these results, which I call the long method. If you want to master the long method, the one that I use to prepare my plants for success like this, you need to watch this video right here, where I break down that entire methodology in detail. Click right here. I'll see you there.